I am here at the AI Summit in London with Matt Armstrong-Barnes, the Director of the Group AI Practice at Servita. Matt, how are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you. Very good. Great to be here. Really excited by the event.
Good stuff. So yes, we're here on day one, early doors in the morning. So you've been working with the Summit for quite some time now. What's your history and background with the AI Summit?
Yeah, so I came along in 2018 when the Summit was hosted actually out of the Excel. So it moved over here a few years ago. I did a keynote back in 2018. I've been involved in the Summit ever since. I've absolutely seen it grow from its initial foundations, a bit more academically focused, to now being massively focused at really building out AI, getting it involved from how people can understand how it can become a critical enabler for business transformation.
So your background is technical.
Yes.
But you obviously spend some time working with, non-technical business leaders. How much of a change have you seen over the last few years? I would imagine people are starting to understand the AI world a little better now. How have you sort of seen that change at the top end of business?
I think you could probably describe that as the conference talks I've done. So back in 2018, it was much more about almost what is it and how do I start to bring it into my organization. And back in 2018, 2017, I was doing lots of education of executives to try and help them understand it. If I wind that forward a little bit, we got into, but how do I avoid common challenges? Because there are major pitfalls it can fall into very easily that are well known and understood, if only you know them. Then we got into, how do you scale? What are the data science headaches that you're going to encounter? And then more recently, it's been, how do I do this in a sustainable, manageable, maintainable, supportable way so that I can bring AI as a transformative technology under the banner of a digital transformation initiative and really start to get value out of it? But because the AI landscape is absolutely changing so quickly, I need to do that in a managed, controlled way.
So are you finding that most of the business leaders you speak to now understand that they need to be enacting some kind of transformation with regards to AI, or are there still some holdouts? And is there still room for, evangelists such as yourself to really kind of make that case?
Yes. I think every organization has got some kind of AI initiative. The ones who are more mature, who've got something that's embedded into their business and are driving real sort of opening up new market opportunities, new revenue streams, are probably in the minority. The ones who've got something in a proof of concept or experimentation phase, they're probably in the majority. And Servita are all about how to get you, we're a practical company. We make AI absolutely as real as it can be in a way that can drive maximum business benefit.
Interesting. And so what are those key steps then in between, that kind of prototyping, early sort of project stage, to get you into a place where your business has kind of fully adopted this kind of technology and is getting the value in a practical way, like you say?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of key stages that you need to go through. One of the things I talk to business leaders about all the time is, if you want to put something in, you want to be able to measure it because you want to be able to understand whether or not it's achieved the things that you thought it was going to do in the first place. In order to measure something, you need to put it in a way that is repeatable. In order to put something in that is guaranteed to be repeatable, it needs to be automatable. And as a result, if you put in place a relevant strategy, understanding your data governance, and how you take that through a repeatable set of stages with amounts of automation, that is going to give you a predictable outcome that you can measure, that you can track back to the original business case that you put in place, and as a result, work out whether or not AI is achieving the value that you thought it was going to put in place.
Okay. So automation then is really like the ground level fundamentals of what you need. If you're implementing an AI strategy, you need to have some degree of automation so that you've got good data going in, therefore good data coming out. Is essentially
I think if you take a step back and look at it from a strategic perspective, my conversations with executives kind of go in one of 6 directions. So either it's an executive level conversation, things like, what's my operating model? How do I structure myself? What's my business case? What's my overarching strategy? How am I going to do this kind of stuff? Through to, I've heard of this agentic thing. How can I create an agentic workflow and how can I build that? And we have to bear in mind that agentic and generative AI has a different life cycle than more traditional AI approaches. So as a result, different set of use cases, different AI life cycle. So another stream is more around how I use algorithmically driven techniques to find hidden patterns in data.
Okay.
Fourth one, what do I do about data? Who owns it? How do I manage it, securely dispose of it, understand who transformed it, why they transformed it? All of these things I need to document, especially with the legislation that's coming in, to make sure that I can understand how I've handled my data. I also need a tech stream. What tech platforms are going to put in place? How am I going to run this stuff? What tooling choices do I make? How do I build out my AI lifecycle in my what's known as my AI tool chain? How do I build my pipelines? And then the last one is people. How do I manage the culture change? How do I embrace or help everybody in my organization embrace AI in the right kind of way? If you think about kicking off those 6 work streams as part of an overarching AI project, it sets you up massively for success.
I feel like we could have a conversation on each one of those 6. So I'm kind of, choosing here which path to take you down, because I think there's lots of really interesting stuff there. You mentioned earlier when we were speaking off camera that this year seems to be the year of agents. So I feel like perhaps that's the route that that we should probably go down here. So in terms of agentic AI, obviously that's at the very forefront of the technology. That seems to be where it all seems to be going. Are you finding more challenges in terms of talking to people about agentic AI, or do you feel like the hype cycle is really taking over and everybody's, getting on the bandwagon, so to speak?
I think as an old school AI guy, I almost find it a little bit frustrating that we're calling it traditional AI. so I think
it almost seems like an oxymoron, doesn't it?
Yeah, before jumping straight into the agentic world, which is complex and still builds on some solid foundations around data. If you don't have the right data in place, agentic-based approaches will still give you bad outcomes.
Right.
So tackling it from a data perspective first, and looking at the intersection points between good quality data and business processes. Mm-hmm. A lot of the time, if we were to do something from an AI perspective, you can use that as a way of understanding, probably at a smaller scale, how to successfully build it into your organization. You'll understand some of the challenges, you'll put in place some common frameworks that you can then leverage into your agentic workflows. And potentially you could start off with something more akin to generative AI, and then experiment around what's happening in the generative AI space to start to build autonomous agents. But again, with those, one of the challenges that we've always faced, be it in the AI space, the Gen AI space, or the agentic AI space, is they make decisions really quickly. So if you're going to make bad decisions, you can make them really quickly. So keeping humans in the loop from a generative AI perspective, having this constant feedback loop, which is around making sure that you can measure it. If you can measure it, you can understand it, and then you can feed it back through your development life cycles. One thing I always tell organizations is AI is not one and done. You don't just install it and walk away. It requires constant management, maintenance, evaluation, redeployment, because AI is built on data. And as we know, data is a fluid entity. It's much more akin to a liquid. And as a result, we're getting new amounts of it. A tsunami of data hits us every single day. How can we take that and make sure that we're understanding how we can bring it into our organization? And we do that with this repeatability that means that we can understand the implications of new changes in data.
Interesting. I suppose there's kind of a tension, right? You mentioned that agents can take decisions and take actions very quickly. Obviously, we humans, us kind of apes, are much slower, right? And I guess there's a tension there. I don't know if you'd agree with this, but there's a tension there between wanting to move quickly and increasingly being able to move quickly as you're empowered by agentic AI, and the kind of the risk management of taking those bad decisions, the requirement to have a human in the loop so that there's some kind of moderation on that flywheel, so to speak. Is that something that you're kind of thinking about at all? Are you feeling that tension?
I think if we were to sort of step slightly away from the fully agentic approach and say, well, actually, how can I bring AI into my daily life, generative AI or AI, that makes me more productive, that takes away some more mundane tasks and allows me to have access at a more conversational level to organizational data. So I don't need to be a programmer. I don't need to be a data scientist. I don't need those. In essence, I can get into my car, I put the key in, I turn the ignition and I drive away. Much more efficient way of doing it. I don't need to understand how all aspects underneath the hood for it to enable me to get from point A to point B quicker. And I think that's where we're seeing huge efficiency gains from an organizational perspective, be that around getting access to sales reports and having to be able to say, who are my top spenders in the past 12 months? Or from a programming perspective, can you write me a quick algorithm that sorts this set of numbers? Things that we as humans can do, but it just takes us time. The bit that we need to educate is around the fact that if we're using generative AI techniques, they hallucinate, they make stuff up. So as a result, these are very quick ways of giving you efficiency gains, but you need to apply that with some common sense. So if you've done a specific lookup and gone, I'm going to second that doesn't look right, it probably doesn't, because we are capable of an increased level of comprehension over the analysis that we're getting back, but it allows us to spark and ask that question, which we might not have got to because we'd have got too caught up in how do I write the query or how do I build the BI dashboard that's going to gather that information for me.
Yeah, interesting. I feel like there's, this will kind of touch on the point you were making about bringing people along for the ride. There's a kind of imperative now that humans need to move themselves up the value chain, right? And that there's, a lot of these kind of mundane tasks or the sort of rote administration tasks can now be carried out by AI. But that, as you say, it doesn't yet have common sense, and there is that kind of gut feel. And then there's also just the sort of long-term strategy and planning piece that I think agents aren't quite there with yet. How are you thinking about this idea of moving up the value chain and bringing people along the journey when you're trying to kind of implement AI in large organizations?
I think the first one is it's a case of getting people involved right up front. People are still at the beating heart of organizations. They're critical decision makers. They're enabling organizations to do what they want to do. And as a result, getting them involved this is from a senior management level all the way down. I've worked with some organizations that have kind of gone a little bit Wild West and are now struggling to rein everybody back in from all of the initiatives that they've run. So starting off with yes, we're embracing AI, push that down through the levels of management, but making sure that you understand it is about the repeatability, common platforms, shared way of working, shared thinking, but also bring in the rest of the organization to make them sure they understand what it means about ethics, compliance, how you're tackling bias, how you're doing AI in a trustworthy way. There are loads of great trustworthy frameworks. You don't need to build your own. Pick up a trustworthy framework, tune it for your organizational values, and then because the people in your organization signed up to the values when they joined, they will find that it resonates well with them. And as a result, they'll be much more ready to embrace what AI can bring. And ultimately, if you're doing it in a way that improves their productivity, then people are much happier to embrace that because it is a way of allowing them to do the more interesting tasks that they might not have wanted to do some of the rote ones before.
Yeah, so I also just want to touch on something that you mentioned there. So you talk about, tuning AI with your brand values. It seems to me like that's probably where a lot of the opportunity is for certainly, digital services businesses now, is like bespoke AI deployment for businesses, right? Like, so that tuning piece going from, the latest, greatest OpenAI model into a place where it's actually performant for a specific business and a specific use case. Is that something that you're thinking about? Do you agree that that's where the opportunity is today?
I think there's three ways of bringing AI into your organization.
Yeah.
You can either bring one that someone else has done, you can build one yourself, And there are hybrid approaches in the sort of in the middle where you take something that someone else has done and add some of your data.
I think that's kind of what I'm getting at, yeah.
The middle one is there's a degree of technical complexity associated with doing that, because you need to bring in some quite complicated algorithms trained with large amounts of data, and you need to understand how to retrospectively apply your data into it. If you've got the skills to do it, absolutely it brings massive business benefits. And a lot of the time, if you've got the skills to build your own, you've probably got the skills to do this hybrid approach. So it does depend on where you want to put your effort. We know there are not enough skills in the AI space already. So having, fighting for talent in that space. Also, there is one of the big things I've talked about at the conference historically is sustainability. We are seeing, the amount of just consumption of power to create and fine-tune these models is enormous. Taking something that somebody else has done and using an existing set of architectural patterns that live around that to make it ready for your organization is hugely beneficial. Ultimately, though, most organizations' data is kind of unique to them. Definitely find this. You can bring in organizations like Servita who can help you with the digital transformation, but you need to bring a lot of that specific domain information, domain knowledge around the data that you've got in your organization. And organizations like Servita, we can help you understand which one of the architectural patterns best suits that, and whether or not it is fine-tuning large language models, or whether or not it's using other techniques, agentic-based retrieval augmented generation. He says, getting into a little bit of depth, that you can bring in that reduce the level of technical complexity for tuning algorithms, but still use some of the most advanced architectural patterns specifically for your data.
So, Matt, is there anything that we haven't discussed that you think is particularly pertinent for this year in terms of AI and in terms of the summit more broadly?
So as we talked about, I think agents are going to be key. I think putting into place the right kind of strategic framework, because the organizations that I've been working with, once you've put the right kind of capabilities in place, the foundational work is done, actually leveraging the latest AI technology is fairly straightforward, because you've got all of that leveraged and in place. I do think start small and grow is going to be a key characteristic that we see. Experimentation, because data science and AI is absolutely an experimental discipline, and it is all about making sure that what you're doing from an AI perspective is fit for purpose, it's manageable, it's achieving your business objectives, and ultimately is going to set your business in the right direction in what is going to become a hugely competitive, agentically driven workplace and operating environment of the future.
Brilliant. Well, look, on that note, we'll wrap up. Matt, thanks very much for your time.
Yes. Yeah, great to meet you. Thanks.
Take care.